I'm L.A. Little, and this is your daily TA Wrap, where we take a look at these markets, and we do it each time from a neoclassical perspective, asking ourselves what happened today, and what does it tell us about tomorrow. I do this show 4 times a week, every Monday through Thursday, live at 9 o'clock Eastern Time here from the base of what is the beautiful Rocky Mountains. Folks, I'm glad you could join me. We actually had a day of down. I'm not even sure how to say that. It has been a long time, indeed, to actually see red on the boards, but red is what we saw today. And we saw it pretty much across the board. We had the Dow Jones dropping about 89, almost 90 points, 16,040. We had the S&Ps down, 12 points, 18,028 and 3/4. Composite, 34, almost 35 lower at 42.38. Index 25.5, 26.5 lower, 36.53, and the Russell down 12.5, 11.49. We had gold down, gold reversed today, goes down. It's actually flat after hours here. It looks like it's actually down 9 more bucks. Is that right? Yeah, that's about right. So 13.10 after hours. Silver down. Silver we talked about last night. You could tell that was like a blow off the way it was trading. GDX was a good trade today if you were looking at that. We kind of talked about it last night. Oil actually was down today, but not much. Natural gas actually hit new highs again today. And that's the front contract. If you look at, and we can look at the UNL versus the UNG, you'll see a big difference. Money moved into the dollar to some extent. That hurt the metals. That hurt most of these commodity-related plays. But really, the story was the SPX and its attempt, and not just attempt, but failure to get over those highs, that last anchor bar resistance that we were talking about last night. So it gets over it this morning, and I was going to bring up the maybe I'll get it. I didn't have time to get my other charts up, but I'll see if I can get the other charts up now. But it got over it this morning, right? First thing, they gapped down again, right? We've seen this before, gap down. It happened on this bar. There was a gap down on this bar, and that gap down was bought immediately, and we're talking about right here. That was a gap down off of what looked like it should pull back, right? It was an over-under after an extended move. Gap down, and they took it straight up, and they never let it loose. Well, today you gap down, and I'll be darned if they didn't come in and do it again. We actually talked about it in the trading room that gap down was probably going to be bought. They took it up almost to the highs, right? Almost to that high. I mean, we got close today, and we actually got very close to this other one that's there, but didn't quite get there. Then they reversed it. Then the volume comes out of it and starts heading back down. Folks, the failure finally actually took place, and that failure was off this anchor bar. This was the bar it was trying to get over. It had tested it here, tested it again, tested it a third time, and when it couldn't hold, it failed, came back. Now what you're going to do is you're going to have to see how this comes back. Where would the spots be that I would be looking? Well, first, I mean, you can just go back to all the places that were resistance on the way up and didn't do anything. Those are going to be the places that this thing tries to come back to now. If I had to pick a spot, I'd probably be looking in this area here. This to me looks like the spot right here that they're going to try to bring it to. So that's the area that I would think you could see a pullback that takes you back that deep. That's the S&Ps. The other story now, and actually the story that we should be watching, is really over here in the NASDAQ. Remember, the NASDAQ broke out. You can see with the little red arrow, right? It's giving us a suspect breakout. Suspect just means that it went over the prior high. That's the breakout. But it didn't have the volume. So if you look at the volume here and you look at the volume there, it's not going to be quite as much. It's slightly less. that breakout suspect. Usually suspect breakouts come back, and they come back faster than the others, and usually I see them come back a lot of times within 6 bars. Well, this one's coming back immediately. So what does that mean? That means it's doing a retest regen now off that high, and that high is not very thick. So in other words, if you take the low of that bar, and that price point's 42.25.5, today's low is 42.37, so you're only 12.5 points away. It's going to test into that, and it's going to see if it can actually regenerate higher. And that's going to be key to letting us know how deep the retrace is going to be, because if it can't hold that, then this was a false breakout, right? Because remember, we had range trades set up. This one broke over the range, but 1 bar later it's back in it. Now, you know, you can get over something for a bar, but if you leg away 2 or 3 bars, you can forget it. It's not coming back. Well, this one didn't, and it came back immediately. And now the question is will it hold here, or will it trade deeper back into this bar, back into that bar, maybe even all the way back down to here? Those are the kinds of things that you can look at for signals to give you signs as to what the rest of the market's going to do. And this is the one you should be looking at right now. And this is the one I'll be looking at tomorrow. So that's the NASDAQ. INDX also came back today. It's not coming back big yet. It's also going to be testing retest regen. So I would expect what you'll probably try to, or what will probably try to happen, is that retest regen off the NASDAQ will try to hold near the lows on it, right? And so when we look at it, you know, you would think that the NASDAQ would try to hold at this area, whereas the NDX is going to try to hold the top. So again, another place that one can look. You legged away 2 bars here. Now you're coming back, right? That's within 6 again, and that gives it the, you know, the probability that it'll come back. It did have a sideways confirmed trend, but we're talking sideways, not breakout, you know, with a bullish trend. So as this thing comes back, let's see how this one trades when it gets back into this area. That's going to be the spot that we want to look at. Does it hold that top or not? And that will give us a clue. And both of those should happen probably tomorrow, I would think. Russell. Just like the SPX, we talked about the Russell 2 days ago. We were talking about the Russell getting over this area, right? And it got over it. And remember, I said that if it legs over here, it's going to shoot for the next spot. That's the next one. And what did it do? It went right to it. Almost to a penny, I think. That top was 1164.77. Today we got to 1163.96. Missed it by about 80 cents. Flips around, comes back down. Now it's right back where it probably should have fell. But a lot of things should have fell, but nothing did fell on the way up on that V-shaped move. It's coming back into an area that quote-unquote should hold now, right? And that's this area. So again, NASDAQ, NDX, Russell, those are the ones you can watch, and they'll give us a clue as to how deep these others are going to trade back the other way. And we finally look at the Dow. So the Dow gets and tests that top, 16,203, gets over it, fails, less volume. That's an anchor bar resistance. Fails into resistance, flips around, comes back the other way. This is the weakest one. SPX and Russell are the next 2, and then of course NASDAQ and then the NDX being the strongest right now in terms of the indexes. Okay, I'm going to flip over. I want to go back to the world markets because so much has been told to us by Europe here lately. So let's pop over to Europe. Let me see what Europe traded, how they traded last night. And then we'll flip over to Asia because we got big numbers coming out of Hong Kong tonight, or actually out of Shanghai. And we'll want to see what those guys are doing. So this is the DAX. The DAX gets over the high, has a little bit more volume. 96.64. Well, folks, that's 4 days failing at it. 4 days straight across, all failures. 1, 2, 3, 4, all across this 96.64 area. They can't take it out. These guys are going to drop tomorrow. They're finally going to pull back because we've got the weakness here, and they failed 4 times to get over it. So that's the German DAX. FTSE was strong, but looked like it was about ready to try to turn. And look at that, so sweet. So it still had not finished up because it had a little ABCD structure going here itself. It had not finished up the ABCD structure. That ABCD structure would have took it to the top, but it's coming into this big volume bar here, and today less volume over the top. Now it's not extended, but that's a failure into this resistance zone. That looks like that one also wants to try to come back. Let me look at the CACs, because the CACs, being probably the worst offender in terms of economics, I don't know how these guys keep going up. 43.51, so they tested it there, failed. Didn't get back there, tested it again today, failed again. They did 1.0 into 1.1, they failed on volume and price again. These all look like they want to come back. Let's go over to Asia. Let's start with Hong Kong. Okay, so Hong Kong, okay, this is good. So now Hong Kong has made it back in to do the full retest regen. So here's the area, right? It's into the little resistance zone that's sitting there. And I shouldn't say to the full retest regen, because that would require you to get to the top of this bar, and it hasn't yet. Remember, that top was about 200 points up, 22.7, and we got as high as 22.6, so about 100 points away. So we got about halfway there, and we're coming back into a gap area, 22.659, and we close under it. That looks like a failure. This one's ready to try to come back too. Let's go look at the Taipei. So in Taipei, okay, so it closes its gap. All right, so you're coming into 85.67. You get into it and you close over it. You're doing 2.2. That looks like it's going to squeeze higher. It looks like that one's going to try to squeeze even higher. And that one's got a big ABCD structure still too, right? I mean, that, oops, get the right bar here. That looks like that has, yeah, that has a nice ABCD structure that takes it past the highs if it really goes. And it broke out with volume off the B point. So that one looks like it's going to try to go higher. That's Taipei, that's chip country, which would mean that the semis are not going to do as bad. Let's see what the semis did today. They finally failed at the highs. They should come back and do their retest regen too now. Right? You're going to see this in anything that was strong. You're going to see retest regens coming back here. And if just like we talked about on the NDX, the NASDAQ, you want to see how they hold on the retest regens. Do they hold it and regenerate higher? Because folks, just consider, if this holds, that is a huge ABCD structure to the upside. I mean, we're not talking small here. These are big numbers, right? Because we had a huge run. The most bullish market is going to give you this kind of a setup, right? This is the setup you're always looking for in a huge move. And that is that you make a huge move, and then you don't give nothing back hardly, and you take off again, right? And when you do that, you know, these kinds of things can just leg, and never let you in, right? Because who's going to buy that little bitty retrace? Most people aren't. So we'll see how these hold up, but that's what you're going to be looking for on each of these as they come back. Let me pop over. I want to see Korea, and then I would like to take a quick look at Australia and see how they're holding up, since they're the big supplier to. So Korea's not telling me anything. Yeah, that's not doing anything. Let's go back and see what Australia's doing. They're the big supplier to China. Oh my goodness, what a run. Boy, I should have looked at this earlier, huh? So Australia, now this is interesting, because Australia does a breakout and they do it on huge volume. A huge volume breakout, right? Folks, that's going to carry. If you want, you might look at, like, what is it, EWA? that's in this one. Let me look at the weekly here right quick with you. Okay, so the high's at 54.53. We're trading at 54.15. It's going to hit that high, and it's going to hit it with volume. And it's already broken multiple swing points on this breakout. This is a good looking market for some reason. And I know that they're heavy into, you know, metals, and metals have done well, but what yeah, it's always fascinating. So I pop over to ETF. ETF looks a lot different, doesn't it? And the problem with these, and I did some investigation, I've talked about this before, I did some investigation on these, and what happens is that what's inside, you know, this structure is not the same thing as the all ordinaries. In other words, the weighting's not the same. And so when you're buying something like this ETF, thinking you're buying the all ordinaries, you're really not. And unfortunately, that's not a good representation. You can see it just looking at that daily. Pop it over to weekly, you're going to see it even more probably. I mean, look at the difference here. Look at that compared to this. Do you see? You know, there's a similarity, right? They both have a W, but that's about it, right? I mean, look at the difference in price. Not even close. So much for that thought. If you're going to trade this, you got to trade the index itself, or you got to be like some of my members and be living there and trading it. Okay, so that's that. Let me pop over to, I want to go next to the ox markets. I used to do the sectors, but the sectors have become less important right now, so I keep trying to go, I always try to shift to whatever is important in my mind. So we'll start with bonds. So, you know, let's talk about what happened today. So why did we get the sell-off? Well, we were stretched like beyond crazy, right? That was one of the things. And we tried to break out twice. I think it was twice today, intraday, and couldn't do it. And then we finally got the selling kick in. We had the minutes come out, and I wrote an article like 4 months ago talking about that the problem was going to be, when Yellen got in there, the problem would be is could she create a harmonious relationship amongst the members in the Fed board, right? Like Bernanke had. I mean, think about it. Had you ever heard, I mean, the Fed members would go out and they'd all talk about stuff, right? But when you read the minutes of those meetings, there wasn't a bunch of acrimony and, you know, fighting or anything. Well, read the ones today. They're setting the stage for her to take over is what they were doing, because that was the last meeting that Bernanke was in a couple days before he left, and it wasn't harmonious at all, and I believe that's going to be an issue, right, as this thing gets going. All right, so the TLT, so that, to me, that was really the tough spot today, is that, and then you've had bad numbers and we keep blaming it on weather, and, you know, maybe it's weather, I don't know, but you know, you can only blame it on weather for so long. Eventually that story gets old. So we get a big spike in the bonds. They sell off today. They can't hold. There was more Fed speak about tapering not going to stop, right? Plus you're seeing these bad economic numbers. I think all that had some impact on what happened. And then we were just stretched beyond belief. Folks, this ain't going anywhere to the downside. Even though it looks like it, and it is engulfing, it looks like. That top was 107. No, it's not quite an engulfing candle. That looks ugly. But even if it comes back down here, it's going to flip right back around probably. So it doesn't look good, but I don't think it's actually going to do anything. Let me pop over to UNL right quick, and then the UNG. So I talked about these. UNL, this is 12 months, right? So this is an average weighting of the futures over a 12-month contract. You can see it's breaking out, but I suspect you're going to look at this one, it's going to be different. Not nearly as much. Well, I thought it would be. I guess I'm wrong. Yeah, big spike up. Both of them show almost the same thing. That's interesting because this one is front month weighted, and the front month is, if I remember my futures right from the day, the front month is way ahead premium-wise than the others. If you're in this market, you've had your run. I don't think I'd get too excited about staying here. It is testing. It's going to do it again tomorrow, but that's looking extended one more time here. You have to remember this is still a bear market on longer term time frames. Let me pop over real quick. I want to look at the dollar to see how it traded, because the dollar is going to impact all of the metals. And not much of a bounce there. Okay, so you got a little bounce, nothing much. Let's go look and see how gold and silver traded off of it. I know they traded down, but what kind of volume came into them? Let's see what that is right quick. And yeah, decent volume coming into them. This thing's going to close this gap. It's going to work its way back. Gold initially is going to have some support here, and then probably make its way back down here. So looks like that funny run is about over here. It was a good one, but it's about done. Let's see if silver looks the same. I'm guessing it will. So, and silver, remember, had the two big gaps up, 10 or 11% in 2 days. That's ridiculous. Yeah, and they take it back, some of it today. They're going to take more tomorrow. And if you're on the wrong side of this trade, you're going to get your head handed to you. And if you're on the right side, you're probably going to take your wife to a fancy restaurant and maybe a night out on the town. All right, let's pop over here and Canada. Yeah, good call. Let's see what Canada looks like. Fred, remind me of that if I forget it, because I typically don't look at Canada, but I should. So let me pop over to the world markets again and see what we're doing there. And I'll try to put this on my schedule to pop it up each time I look at the world markets, because I got a lot of members up in Canada. Yeah, so they're doing the same thing, right? And essentially what was happening here on both of these is that the currencies were being devalued fairly rigorously in Australia, in Canada, more so in Canada than Australia. You got a breakout here, you got a nice volume spurt the day before. That's a suspect breakout. This looks a little different than Australia. That's suspect. I would think that you're going to see this thing trade back in here, do the retest regen next. So Canada probably trades back into here, and you know it's leaving some decent volume, so it's not done, but it's got its breakout. It's got to do a retest regen. So that looks that actually looks good too. I wonder if the FX what is the FXC maybe? No, it's probably not Canada. What is it? That's a Canadian dollar. So that one's starting to come back again. And you guys that are doing your currency, man, that was a good spot to do it right there. I wish we'd been watching this. That was where, members that are trying to exchange into dollars on spikes. That was the spike right there. Now you got it coming down again. Let's see. I was trying to think of the ETF. So it's EWC maybe. Yeah, that's the Canadian. So this one actually looks a little bit better than the Australian ETF. Yeah, that one looks a lot better actually. So it's a closer image. But as you can see, it's not at the highs, whereas as the Canadian index is. All right, let me take some questions here, and if I have time, I'll go to the sectors. So, hello LA, can you take a look at EGI? Let's see what she looks like. EGI. So he bought it today. Well, you got some nice volume tells on it. So this is Entree Gold. Unfortunately, I think you're stepping in the gold at the wrong time, man. Gold shares, all right? Because take a look at GDX. And now this is actually a small cap, so this is going to be GDXJ. So if I take a look at the GDXJ and look at the sector, you had a big spike up, right? What do big spikes come at the end of runs? What does that mean? Well, to me, when you make a nice big run and you get a big, huge spike, right, in volume, that usually says you're going to set up a range trade. So you've probably had your top. Now that doesn't mean it can't test it again. It probably will, but you're going to get a pullback first, and that looks like where it's trying to come to. So that would be, it's another about halfway as far as it went today. Let's go back to your stock now, EGI. Entree, was it Entree or on? Yeah, Entree Gold. And let me get it on my weekly as well. Okay, so your weeklies is pushing the highs. Volume is tapering off. Do these guys make any money? I'd have to go look. I could look for you right quick. Let me pop in here and see. Because if they're not making any money, I'd be very careful with them. So if I go into my tools, pop in here, go to the tools right quick, and to the cube, and EGI, and then come down and see if they're making any money or not. They're not. So there's no revenues. Yeah, I'd be very careful here. And I say that because if you get caught in this stock and they have no revenues, and let's just say that the market doesn't do too well, you know, it's hard to raise money right now. You got to give away half the farm if you want to get some money. So I don't know what kind of money, you know, I don't know what the run rate is or anything, but you know, I'd have to look and see how much cash they have on hand. You need to go check that stuff out to decide if these guys can hang around or not. Be careful here. Just don't let it get away from you. Matter of fact, I just wouldn't let it trade much lower than you know, you got a nice little area here it should hold. It should hold right in here, right? And that's really where it's testing. If it gets underneath that, you can easily come back to here, right? So you have to decide, are you going to stay with something that far? That's 12% because this is 32-cent stock, right? So be careful what you're doing here, okay? China PMI 48.3, 49.5 estimate. China's New Year may have distorted. Oh yeah, we've got another reason to distort our numbers. Now it's a New Year in China. I love it, man. You know, there's never, think about it, man, there's never an excuse when things go up, right? There's always an excuse when things go down. It's just the way it is, right? Because Wall Street is sell side, right? They want to sell. And so they're always going to be talking about the good, never about the bad. And yeah, I mean, it's like, yeah, right. So their numbers are distorted. Well, hello, do they like only have a New Year once in a blue moon? No, they have it every year. So don't they like adjust for that or something? Yeah. I don't know, man. It's too funny. I'm not making fun of you. I'm just laughing at, you know, it's always what's said. You know, you read this stuff and you say to yourself, are you kidding me? All right, so let's talk quickly. I got a minute here. Tomorrow, you gotta watch those retest regen zones. They're going to be the clues. They're going to tell you what's happening, right? And so you watch, you see how they come into them, how they behave. You know, personally, when you make this kind of move, and I'm going to go back to the SPX right quick. When you make this kind of a move, and I'm going to bring it to a daily, you know, where you spike down, right, straight away, and then you go straight back up, right? Folks, that's not normal stuff. This is like insane stuff, right? It's not normal for this to happen. Okay, so I can imagine a case where this comes down, test, and holds here, or maybe holds here, right? And then goes back and sets the ABCD structure up, right? It's not hard to imagine that. And with the NASDAQ having broken out and already broken its range, you know, if the NASDAQ hangs up there at the top of the range, even if it comes back into the retest regen and plays with it, if it doesn't break down and really start to tumble, right, then this thing's probably going to break out, right? This is probably going to break out. We're going to have new highs. Now, you can also imagine a situation where, you know, that was it. You went to the highs, you failed, and you're done. And you come down and you start breaking these areas that should hold now, just like we broke them on the way up. So you can imagine either one. How do you know which one? You look for clues. You look for the retest regens. You see how they play out. That will give you clues about what the rest of the market wants to do, and you can make informed decisions. Folks, thanks for joining me. Have a great night. Take care of yourself. I'll see you tomorrow. We'll do it all again. Have a good one. Take care, folks. Good night.